ошибку, и после
Ой,
этого начинаю.
прикольно.
Вот.
Так, ну что, shall we
So
start?
let's start. Yeah, shall we start?
Hello, hello.
Hey everyone.
I'm Vitaly. This is Pavel. Pasha, sorry, not Pavel, Pasha.
Yeah, I prefer for other people to call me Pasha because it's more informal, and I like how it sounds. When my papa was angry, he called me Pavel, and now
I see.
he was really serious when he was angry. So yeah, now I prefer informal name. And
Okay, yeah. So I took the opportunity to set a title for our podcast, Pragmatic Humanists. I love the
yeah,
approach, and I think you do as well, because we share common beliefs about this. I think that people need to be.
yeah. We have many areas of intersection in our beliefs. Let's call it this way.
Yeah, right. So we have two topics to start today, and that's our first episode of our first podcast together. So I'm very happy to have this happening. So thank you, Pasha.
Mutual.
That's cool. So we have two topics. First one is about education at a workplace. And second one is the culture of rationalization. They kind of influence each other, because without a culture of rationalization, I don't think you will be able to sell this idea that education is required for your company and for your team and for your employees in most cases.
Before speaking about education, I think we should define it. What education is like? What and about what kind of education are we speaking? For example, are we speaking about cases when your company sends you to learn English, for example, for somewhat reason, or is it about when your company sends you to learn to be a better manager? It's two different and difficult topics. One about hard skills, second about soft skills, and it looks like company is always interested in teaching you hard skills, right? Of course, it may be even more interested. Yeah, please.
I wouldn't fully agree to this, because, I mean, to me, this separation of skills into hard and soft is a bit vague and strange, because I don't fully buy into this separation. I think that most skills can be trained. And for example, I think that for developers, the usually called soft skills is like being able to communicate, or being innovative, or being initiative, let's say. And I think these skills can be trained as well. So I don't fully agree that they are soft skills.
Nobody says that soft skills can't be trained. I never say that. Just for a record.
Okay, so what's the
I
distinction?
mean, distinction is, by Wikipedia, it's soft skills can be used outside of your profession, outside of your area of work.
Oh, I see.
And
So,
hard
like, for
skills,
example, if you learn assembler, you can only use it at work. But if you
yeah,
learn presentation skills, it can be helpful in other areas as well.
yeah, absolutely. But companies usually by teaching people to hard skills. For example, if we know that you have to program in Java and now you are programming only in Python, most probably your company will pay for you to learn Java, because it's cheaper for them than to hire a new person, and it's quite obvious thing. And another case is when you are a developer and your company wants you to be, for example, team leader. Most probably your company, at least in Russia, won't buy you management trainings, which a huge mistake as of me, but still, it's an interesting, it's an interesting nuance, I would say.
I think that companies underestimate the influence of let's call it soft skills. Let's call it like let's take for example presentation skills as a simplest example of the soft skill. So I think companies underestimate the value of skills like that, even for developers, and especially for managers, of course. And yes, I think it's a huge mistake that companies don't pay that much attention as I think it should be paid to growing and helping guys and girls develop those skills. Yeah. So you're 100% right. I was a team lead. I've been a team lead for almost 8 or 7 years. I'm not sure how much time I spent being a team lead, but anyway, none of the companies wanted me. None of the companies approached me and told me, "Go learn this, go study this." No, none companies did that for some strange reason, and I think this approach is deeply flawed. And yeah, I think it's partly due to the fact that companies know how to have distinct and separate specializations for developers. So like this one knows front end, this one knows Java, but for team leads, they don't know what a proper team lead should actually know, and that is why they can't rationalize, let's say, sending a new team lead to a certain course or whatever.
That's an interesting thing. I believe they don't teach us to be a better managers, to be managers at all,
Mhm,
because their way of thinking is following. This person is already senior engineer. It had
mhm,
been trained like 4 or 5 or 10 mentees.
mhm.
It
Yeah.
looks like he is able or she is able to be a mentor. She's
Mhm,
he person is able to teach other people and to manage other people. So it means automatically and implicitly that this
mhm.
person is a manager already, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And also, what's interesting that uh, even in the theory of management mm, or teaching, there is no way to properly measure a good manager or a good teacher. You can't measure a good teacher by the grades that her or his students have. You can't measure a proper manager by I don't know, seniority of his team. Let's say like in the moment, of course he will or she will try to grow the seniority of the team, but it will take time. So in the moment you can't properly measure how good or bad a manager or a teacher is. So that is why it's very hard for companies to spend money on teaching.
I believe it's hard to measure anything. Like, is my developer a good developer? It's extremely hard to tell. We can introduce some synthetic metrics like burn down of tasks or like lines of code. On the, the only thing I can imagine more or less relevant for measuring quality of developer is customer satisfaction.
That's
if
true.
if
Yeah.
customer if customer is satisfied by the work, but here is a slight problem, because customer is maybe satisfied with product, but it doesn't tell us anything about one concrete developer, right? If it's not
Exactly.
product developed by one developer, of course.
Exactly. And this means that individual measurement of any developer or any product manager or any support engineer or anyone in the product team is just not needed at all, because customer is demanding quality of the whole product, and quality starts from product, not from a developer or from a QA engineer or anyone else. So it means that we as managers are only interested in the overall mm, happiness of our customers, which is like a function of multiple parameters, where we all are those parameters.
But here the huge question arises, like, sh- should we fire a person if we
Mm,
think it's under underperforming?
underperforming. Mm.
And yeah, it's underperforming.
To me, it's no, but like I'm always talking about the ideal system. The ideal system almost almost to trees, almost similar to trees. So I'm talking about the
I
ideal
think you
system.
should translate the trees word.
It's the theory of inventions. Do we have something like that in English?
I'm
Maybe.
not sure, but we definitely don't have trees in English.
Yeah, we don't have it. No, actually, it's in the internet. TRIZ, a Russian acronym for the theory of inventing problem solving.
Oh,
So, yeah, it is there on the English in the English internet. So, to me, the ideal system is either non-existent but still fulfills its duties, or almost non-existing, or just doesn't exist at all but still fulfills the duties of it. So, I think that our system will have resources to teach anyone to become more productive or to amend the system or the processes so that some mm, diversity of a or of certain part of the team or certain employee will be taken into account by the system. So let's say we have someone, like an absurd example, but still someone who types really slowly. Can we, maybe due to some physiological conditions, can we fire this person? Should we fire this person? If this like if we have infinite resources or almost infinite big resources, we can change our system so that it takes this physiological condition into consideration, and so that this person is somehow, like, we find some workaround around this physical condition, and this person still can function properly.
yeah, I like that you're talking about inclusion. It's
Hmm.
definitely an interesting topic, but for me, I see the limitation because
Hmm.
almost no company has near to unlimited resources. Of course, we can call some companies who have lots of resources, but usually these resources should be spread uh, between all employees, and
But
as
then
soon as we spread them, amount becomes not so big.
it's very interesting that um, I would say, and I would even state this as my thesis, that most companies um, during their product development cycle, they experiment a lot, and so that most of the features are not needed. There is this famous case of the visual helpers in Microsoft Word. You remember those? There were
No,
some,
could
like,
you remind me?
in Microsoft Word, they used to have this tips, скрепка, how we call it,
I
pin,
don't know. Yeah,
pin or something, a visual pin, and so this pin, when they launched some analytics against its usage, it showed up that this pin wasn't used by customers pretty much at all. So something like $100 million was spent on supporting this pin in all the versions of Microsoft Word, until they ran this analysis that none of the customers, pretty much none of the customers, were actually using this, but people just laughed at the stupidity of the feature. So the amount of resources spent on incorrect product hypothesis, not incorrect, inefficient product hypothesis, is always really huge. And so I would say that any diversity within the team, even if it's physiological diversity or focus diversity, so some people can't focus for really long period of time on doing one task. So I think that this diversity brings a lot of value, and that usually we just follow the simplest solution to a complex problem. We fire a person who is just a bit different compared to others, rather than trying to see what we can benefit from this diversity. So the famous example again here is visually impaired people. Visually impaired people sometimes find so strange use cases or such strange bugs in the system that we never knew of, and they are essentially low productive compared to others. So maybe we could find more interesting concepts and use cases and things like that from in our product if we support better diversity, even if we think that the person is low performing at this moment. That's one point.
you know, there are two types of hiring people. One of them is called Japanese style, and a second one is called European style. Japanese style is when you hire basically anyone and move them all across the company until you will find the suitable place for them. And European style is when you hire a person to the concrete position. And your idea maybe could work in Japanese style recruitment. I'm not sure because it's still tightly coupled to mindset of person. We
Yes.
won't we won't hire any random person into our company in hope that we will be able to find suitable place for them.
But
We
then
will
there is another thing. There is another thing that we and our behavior is very much dependent on the system itself. And so, if we make the system so that so that people who are within, who are inside this system, are, okay, bad word, but still motivated, their intrinsic motivation strives, and so they want to properly perform. They're not punished for mistakes, they're not punished for experiments, they're not punished for initiatives, then they might potentially be much better. I fully agree that we will not hire just a random person, yes, because we will spend too much resources on the person who we hire just from the street. Maybe he's a baker, great baker, but we're not baking food here. We are just producing code, or solving clients' problems. And so baker won't suit us well. And yet, if we hire someone who is, let's say, physically and mentally capable of doing algorithmic work, or doing software development, or doing whatever we need him to do or her to do, then I would say that in most cases it's our system and our process that fails when we call someone a low performer rather than the person himself or herself.
yeah, but what if person have had really reached its limit?
What do you
Like
mean by limit?
uh, they won't be able to write code better.
Hmm.
We don't know why. We don't know where this person limits are. I
Hmm.
know for sure, for me, for example, that I won't be able to create a compiler for any language because
Hmm.
it's way beyond my capabilities. I won't even ever, I won't even be able to learn how to do this
Hmm.
because it's too complex for me. And what if one person, one person's limit is much closer? It won't be able to write a code of good, of high quality enough.
Hmm. But don't you think that certain tasks can be suited better for certain people? So let's say, for example, when I hired a junior developer, when I used to work in Rocket Bank, I hired a junior developer, and the guys, the senior guys who were mentoring him, they offloaded tasks they weren't interested in, almost like usual labor tasks, normal tasks, like do some markup or do some basic templating stuff, to this guy. So the guy could learn while they were happier doing their more complicated jobs, more complicated work, meaning that tasks are always diverse, and there are always things that we can um, offload or delegate to a person who, as you say, reached her limit.
Um, I'm not sure, to be honest.
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, for a couple of reasons. Reason first is when we offload something, it already looks bad. Like one person doesn't want to do this boring job, and this person wants me to do this boring job. It actually demotivates a bit. The second reason is at some level we want person to progress. We don't need a forever junior developer. We need developer who will grow
But
until
why?
middle, until senior maybe.
But why?
And if we see that this person is unable to understand some level of abstraction, one of my first team leads used to say that your level of maturity as developer is measured in how complex how complex abstractions you can
Mhm.
understand.
Mhm.
So, for let's imagine that at some point person stops to understand more complex abstractions.
Mhm.
What
Mhm.
should we do here?
But do you think that it actually is demotivating? Because, for example, I love digging, like physical labor digging. So if during my work I was given some digging tasks, not programming, not DevRel tasks, not anything like that, but just go dig, I would be happy with that. And I know that I would not ever grow as a digger. I would not ever do more digging, like better digging or whatever. I have certain physical limits. I can't dig, I don't know, 100 tons per day. It's not possible at all. And yet I would be happy if I was assigned a task like that. And people are very different. Some people consider certain tasks boring, while others consider them, oh, it's okay, I'll do it. I like monotonous work. It's fine for me. So more mm, conveyor style of work.
I believe that you are right. And there is such a kind of person around who prefers to perform routine work.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I think that most part of developers I've ever worked with always say that they don't like to perform the same task again and again. It's too boring for them.
It's interesting. And here I would say that when a person has good experience at performing monotonous, like boring, almost boring stuff, this person can have proper insights how to automate these tasks. And sometimes these insights don't require significantly higher abstractive thinking. It's just
It's
okay.
it's exactly one more level of abstraction, and
Okay.
it may be hard. Like
Hmm.
there are some people around who don't understand what monad is. Monad is
Hmm.
very basic construct
Hmm.
in development.
Hmm.
Uh, I'll tell you more.
Hmm.
Most of us, when programming, use those monads.
Yeah, of
We are
course.
using
Hmm. Yeah.
lists that are monads. We are
Hmm.
using futures or promises in JavaScript, which are monads, and so
Yeah.
on. But still, when you say this, that just create a simple monad for that, people won't understand because it's too abstract for them. They didn't even try to dive this deep into computer science. It's not deep, to be honest.
But
It's as well as
shall we
application transfer and
shall we
so on.
recap? So you think there is a certain almost physiological limit of people intellectual skills growth.
Maybe, or it may be not hard limit, but something almost hard. It may be
Mm-hmm.
even soft limit, but still it requires us to make significant effort
Mm-hmm.
to overcome it. And it
Yeah.
may be really a problem. In real world, I mean, of course, in perfect world, we would just put this effort in and overcome this barrier. But in real world, it is not profitable to do this, and that's
Mm-hmm.
why sometimes we prefer not to teach people. I think.
Yeah. But again, I would say that the teaching process and paradigms and concepts and approaches that we use lack a lot. Like I think that this science of teaching, there is still not properly developed because there were certain experiments with Montessori, there were certain experiments in Russia in 1970s with Shitinin, so there were teachers who tried to go beyond certain limits that we have now and improve the overall the proper science. So I think maybe in the future we will find cheaper ways how to teach people, because I ran this small teaching experiment and it went really well. That was
Yeah, and we have teaching experiments right now. For
Mhm.
example, in Saint Petersburg, there is school called Apelsin, which can be
Yes.
translated as orange,
Mhm.
with a very interesting teaching technique.
Yeah.
It's it's called scholars scholars driven school,
Yeah. Yeah.
actually.
Hmm.
And the main idea is uh, scholars only go to those lessons which are interesting for them, and it's an interesting approach. We don't know if it will work. It's an interesting. I would try.
Mhm,
I would try even on my children. I just, maybe it's a little bit too expensive for me, and
mhm,
it's in another city. But still,
mhm.
I would try if I had the chance.
And this school is based on Shetinin's theory of autonomous learning and mutual teaching, etc., etc. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. There are experiments, but they're only experiments at this moment, and uh, companies do not pay too much attention to those new trends or new experiments. They usually have competitive learning, still competitive learning. So you
Yep.
have to compete with others with grades, with marks, with still like with shit like that. And basically, you don't help each other to become team members. You don't appreciate the diversity. Well, with this approach in the Orange School, they say build upon your strength. If you want physics, go physics. Your whole life will be devoted to physics. That's your strength. If you want, I don't know, physical activities, go be a sportsman. It's going to be your life then. So yeah, they focus on growing on strength of scholars, and this is really interesting. And this diversity in teams, I think, should help. It's again, it's my idea. Maybe I'm believing in it too much, but what I see in healthy teams is that everyone is different and everyone has her own or his own strength. Let's say. I don't know, infrastructure knowledge or backend deep skill, deep understanding, or database or whatever, and then combined together, we form a proper structural unit which can operate and do whatever product requires.
But we will fall shortly because bus factor is usually one in such teams, and this is a huge problem because if you are interested in front end and I'm interested in back end, and we are building an awesome product, we really can build an awesome product. Why not?
Mhm.
When something will happen to me,
Yeah,
I
bus
don't
factor
know
only.
how to compensate it. You will have to find a new person. We won't potentially we won't even share expertise, and
Mhm,
it's an issue.
mhm,
Theoretically we should, but how can I put my expertise into you if you are not interested? And and you just said that you are building on your own strengths, and your strength is front end
mhm.
development.
And that is true to a certain degree. So, for example, I'm not sure about the Orange School, but the original theory that Chitin had was that there is a basic level that everyone should get. So you have in your schedule, you have at least a few lessons of physics anyway if you're going to be a sportsman. Otherwise you won't become a proper member of a society, because Chitin was interested not in growing sportsmen or physicists or physics. He was interested in growing a proper member of a society. So let's say in our analogy, a proper engineer who can at least somehow do everything. Yeah, I'm experienced in front end, but if I take a couple of days, I will recall some memories of SQL and would do basic, of course, not great enough, but basic database schemas and work with them as well. So, and if you are a proper backender with proper database knowledge, database skills, you would help me do that. So before leaving, you would either help me do that somehow or whatever.
Oh, you're speaking about graceful living, but it's called
Yeah.
bus factor because of buses, because
Yes.
of
Yes.
reasons. Something can happen in an
In
instant.
between. Yeah,
Yeah, in an instant. I was alive and now I'm dead
that is
because
true.
bus hit me.
That is
It's an
true.
issue.
But then you can start teaching during the process, during the work process, where
Yeah,
everyone helps each
I
other.
can, but everyone should be interested. And it's
Mhm,
today I acknowledge that it's called scholastics. Not everybody wants and is able to learn because yeah, we all have different scholastic abilities.
mhm. That is
Um,
true. And I would say
and
that
it
we're all
means
spoiled by education that we had in our childhood,
we are not
spoiled to a
sure.
certain degree.
We are not sure.
Yeah.
We really are not sure. For example, there is a global SAT test,
Hmm.
Scholastic Abilities Test
Hmm.
in US,
Hmm.
and scholars from all schools usually pass it,
Hmm.
and they all have different, different mark in this test.
Hmm.
And for me, it may mean that all people have really different scholastic abilities.
Yeah.
So here we are hitting the issue.
Hmm.
If you're extremely talented in something, but you have low scholastic abilities,
Hmm.
it will lead for to you to be almost unable to learn something. I'm
Yeah,
not
it
sure
will
if
take
I'm
more time.
correct.
Yeah. It will take much more efforts. That's for
Yeah,
sure. So for me, for example, being a front end developer for 13 years, if I'm now trying to understand how algorithms work, and I'm just about to start doing that, it's fucking hard. Seriously, like I'm trying to wrap my head around some artificial things for me. So yeah, it is hard, and we were all part of normal government schools. We were all pupils of normal government schools where this um, competitive
public schools, you mean,
teaching,
right?
public schools, yes, competitive teaching was done, where we were forced to do stuff. We were not incentivized of something to a degree, let's say, to learn something. We all had bad teachers that just almost destroyed love to certain interesting concepts. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's very hard.
my elder son is learning in public school, and
Mm-hmm.
he loves school. He loves school.
Mm-hmm.
They had no marks or grades in first or maybe even first two, I
Mm-hmm.
would say,
Years,
classes.
classes, yeah.
Years, and looks like it worked in a good way. Like they had no competition,
Mm-hmm.
but also somehow he still has this excellent marks only syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. Uh, he 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 has lots of 5 marks, which is A
Mm-hmm.
in American
Mm-hmm.
system. No,
Mm-hmm.
top marks,
Mm-hmm.
and he is upset every time when
Mm-hmm.
he has mark 4, for example,
Yeah,
and
which is be
which is good enough actually.
yeah, yeah.
But I'm not sure. For me, it looks wrong. But
Mm-hmm.
on the other hand, some say that marks are the easy way to give a feedback that this time you were not perfect.
I think it's too easy. I
Yeah,
think that
of
people
course.
try to find the easiest solution. It's like in this proverb where you're trying to search for lost keys under the light instead of the place where you lost them.
Yeah, absolutely. But there is another issue. When your class is like 35 or 30 pupils, you don't really have a choice.
Exactly.
You should do so. Of course, we would prefer to have 10 pupils in our classroom,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
it's not only. I mean, the world is not perfect. Can we really solve this issue with all limitations we really have?
I don't
Because
think even.
there are no 30 pupils in one classroom in Orange
Yeah.
School.
Yeah, yeah. I think it is very hard to even consider government education problems. It's really hard to talk about them because every government has such limited resources to public schools. In our companies, we have much more resources, and yet lots of companies don't even take juniors. Just no, thank you. And they struggle to get middle developers, struggle to hire middle developers. I've heard stories like companies were trying to find and secure a middle developer for them for 3 months, while they could have taken a junior developer and taught him during those 3 months. I think he would be almost what they decide, what they demanded.
It's an interesting question. Usually, uh, criterion on which you can get a junior developer is quite wavy. We don't really know what we want from
Hmm.
junior developer.
Hmm.
We wanna maybe we want somebody who already knows some technologies. Maybe we
Hmm.
want somebody who has huge learning capabilities.
Yeah.
And it's actually hard to test if person
Hmm.
has large learning capabilities. If they don't have,
It
what we
is very
should
hard.
do?
Yes.
Yeah,
I
should we
think
still
you
hire them?
can't. I think you can't even properly measure learning capabilities during the interview. There should be some other way. I'm not sure what other way.
My brother
Uh,
says that it's possible. Yeah, my brother is um, he's consultant
mhm,
in company called Capsai Consulting,
mhm,
and he's all into HR consulting actually,
mhm,
and
mhm.
he's about building how to say доказательный in English, uh,
Um,
provable psychology.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That's
like
very interesting. Hmm.
so he's building and testing models like
Hmm.
on real people, and
Hmm.
also he's consulting about um management reserve and
Oh,
talent
nice.
reserve in companies. So it's actually his thing, and he says that it's possible to measure in real
Hmm.
numbers, not
Hmm.
quality measure, but numerically measure the educability of person.
Interesting. I've actually Googled. It's evidence-based evidence, so it's not
Evidence
proof of
based.
evidence-based. Yeah, it's really interesting. If you could get some links from him or some information from
Yeah,
him, I would.
but I don't really have them. But
Mhm,
it looks like it's well, he's it's what he does for living actually. So
mhm,
I'm not sure if he can give anything for free because but
mhm,
they have comprehensive mm, sets of tests for almost
mhm,
anything. They provide
mhm,
other services too, like
mhm.
assessment center and so
Yeah.
on. But
Mhm,
assessment center is exceptionally expensive. It's like
yeah. Yes.
$1,000 per person. We
Mhm.
definitely don't want to spend so much money for hiring a junior developer. We actually don't want to waste such amount of money even for a senior developer.
And I would argue here that I would say that again I have my thesis that uh, educating or learning the one that we started the podcast with is educating an engineer is more important for the company than for the engineer herself because the company gets more value out of engineer's work than the company shares with the engineer with money. So the company gets value from customers and they pay and the engineer his wage. They don't pay percentage of what they got from clients. So it's not like let's say Marxist fair. So it's not socialist fair. It's capitalistic fair, and so the company wants more value and sooner more and sooner they want value from engineers and so that it is not wasting money, it's investing money into improving the, the way how the engineer works.
Yes, but on the other hand, as a hiring manager, most probably I would prefer to hire somebody who already knows everything I need and can do anything I need. And I have limited budget actually.
Hmm.
So if you ask me, Pasha, would you hire somebody or hire
Hmm.
somebody cheaper but
Hmm.
more risky because you can't be sure that you will be able to teach this person something? I am not sure that my answer is latter.
I of course understand you, but then again, hiring a senior developer is very tough task for most of the companies. And
Yep,
again, if we check HR statistics in the market, we will see that the average closing position time is 3 months for a senior developer.
that's
So
fine.
if we have a company that wants to hire, let's say 20 software engineers, senior grade, they will spend 20 times 3 months. They will spend
Oh,
60 months in total.
only in absolute numbers, because
Yes.
if you have 20 recruiters, you,
Yeah.
you will spend the same
Yes.
three
Yeah.
months, and it
I
will be not the only position they're trying to close actually.
But then again, if we talk about absolute numbers, if a company wants to hire 20 senior developers, maybe it would be easier for them to have three groups of middle developers hired and then taught. So maybe again that would save money rather than waste.
Yeah, you will save time, but I'm not sure that you will save money, because you should hire somebody who is able to educate other people, and you should have a proper measure, to a proper way to measure if somebody is taught good enough.
But then
And
I would
it's
say that it's would be even better to hire someone who can teach your engineers to teach others. So then it will have other implications, good implications, because if your engineers know how to teach others, they will have better team communication, better social dynamics within the team, and they will adopt new engineers whom they taught much better.
yeah, but hiring such person, it's 60 months again.
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
I
So
mean,
again, it's a
it's
very
one to
interesting
one.
balance of different approaches and different budgets that you can try to think of.
Yeah, I would say that maybe, of course, I think that in perfect world we should try educate everybody. And
Mhm,
also, I don't believe that there are uneducatable people.
mhm,
But and also, my aunt,
mhm.
who who is violin player, says that there are no people with no hearing, musical hearing,
Yeah, yeah. Mhm,
and she can teach everybody.
mhm.
But still, I know that she has pupils who learn for literally for years, for many years,
Less and
to
more
start.
talented.
Yeah, lesson, and that's an issue in real world.
Mhm.
If you want to play in Northwestern in Sinfonietta,
Yeah,
you should be much more talented, to be honest.
that is true. That is true. And again, here we are just talking about the amount of resources a company can spend on compensating for the shortage of a labor market. It is just that. So we have this good mm, example of Yandex or Google companies who always hire people and who have no problems of hiring people, even though the process of hiring and interviewing, I think, is has
Awful.
to be improved. Yeah, has to be improved. Let's say, and yet they always can hire people, and they do that just because they spent a huge amount of resources on their brand image, on the PR and marketing. So again, it's just a matter of where you put resources, either in teaching or in PR and brand, or in or in optimizing processes, your software development processes, so that less people can build more, or you optimize product discovery processes, so from the upstream better tasks and better hypotheses come to the downstream to IT. So it's just a matter of choosing where you put your resources, I think.
Yeah, I think so. But also, there is one more interesting way you didn't mention. You
Mhm,
can just do interesting things, and it's actually what JetBrains does. As far as I know, we don't have any marketing of our
mhm,
open positions. We
mhm,
have stands of on major conferences, but we
mhm,
are not trying to hire anybody there.
mhm, mhm.
Um, we still, everybody around still knows that we are doing interesting things, and we are the employer that, in some sense, of course, it's brand image too,
Yes, it is.
but yeah, I think this is the proper way to position your company. We have
That's
interesting
interesting.
tasks for
Mhm.
everybody actually.
That's a good approach as well. For example, we hired one developer in case who was just using our product. So he used our product and then he came to us to work on this product. That's
That's a good,
freaking
yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
You're a small company on, I believe, on family stage of development, and I
Yeah.
believe for you it's the best possible way to hire people.
Hmm.
Actually, I believe it's the best possible way to hire at every stage of company
Exactly.
life.
And
But
and
still, when you're Sberbank sized,
mm,
it becomes tricky. And
I would say,
sometimes you have to be very big to be very successful. JP
that
Morgan, Sberbank
yeah.
are so big
Mhm.
for a reason.
That's true to a degree. Again, I'm not an economist, or I'm not, nor I am a organizational expert or whatever, but I think there are ways of building smaller companies into a conglomerate where you are not facing those organizational issues that huge corporations have, because there is this Peter principle. Maybe you've heard of it, that in a big corporation any employee rises till the worst incompetence of his
Yeah,
career.
yeah, to the level up to the level of incompetence.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
It's
so
I would say that it's truth not only for huge corporations. I would say that it's correct for small companies too.
yeah, but
And we can find lots of examples, I believe.
yeah, but it affects in the big corporations. It affects much worse, just because if you are a senior vice president, then your inefficiency and your incompetence makes so many people's lives more miserable.
Yeah, I would say that the level is the same, but relatively.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's proportional to the size of company. Of
yeah.
course, the bigger company is, the more unhappiness you can bring there. On the other
Mhm,
hand, the more happiness you can bring there too.
mhm,
So
mhm,
I mean, every successful decision you made will make really lots of people much more happy, and among your customers and among your employees.
mhm.
So it's a tough thing. I would not say that big corporations are inherently ill or sick. I would say that everybody is inherently sick.
That's a good topic for for a separate podcast. I will
Yeah,
prepare a a post on agent principle theory. I'm digging into that. I'll prepare a post about that. We'll discuss it with you, and then we'll discuss it in a separate episode of a podcast.
yeah,
I think it's very interesting because I would say, again, my point of view is that the bigger the company is, more flawed it is. But again, that's my opinion, and let's have it separate.
yeah.
Discuss
We should
separate.
discuss it separately, and
Hmm.
I think today we should summarize what we discussed.
Yeah.
First thing, we know that there are flaws in education, and we
Hmm.
agree on that. That make us think that people won't learn, right?
Hmm. Yeah, that is
The
true.
second thing is we believe that in perfect world, education could be the most economically proficient
Efficient.
way to
Yeah.
solve,
Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
to solve things, to solve issues. But in a real world, it's always about a balance, about hiring somebody and hiring somebody else.
Yeah.
And still, it's all about money and budget. And
Hmm.
sometimes it looks like we should make unpleasant decisions, right?
I think yes. I think yes. And I would say that, again, my point of view is that if we face the situation where where we have to make many unpleasant decisions, then it should be a red flag for us to reconsider our process. Because whenever anyone is fired, our brand reputation goes down. It will always be like that. And we are in the condition now in our labor markets that it's so hard to hire new employees. And we all heard about Exola, we all heard about Amazon working conditions for those who do labor work. And it is going to be harder and harder, and more and harder means more expensive to hire people when you suck in your brand reputation. So again, yeah, my point, of course, we might sometimes face the situation where we need to fire someone. And yet, if we fire a lot, we need to think twice what we're doing.
Actually, I would say that even if we are firing a single person,
Hmm.
we should have very good reasoning behind it,
Hmm. Yeah.
because in future we will need to make such decision too, and
Yeah.
standards should remain, and it
Hmm.
should be publicly known why
Yeah.
we will be able to fire somebody, will decide to fire somebody.
Yeah. I always advise my guys the guys that I'm trying to teach to clarify the requirements and expectations of an employee. So whenever you're joining a company, make sure you understand why you can be fired in advance before you are hired. And that's I think a universal advice.
On the other hand, there was an excellent lightning talk by Nikita Makarov,
Hmm.
which was called "You're Not Fired Yet," and
Hmm.
it was about everybody will be fired eventually. You should
Hmm.
be ready, and you should know how it will work. And
Hmm. Yeah.
this is good way of thinking too, because
Hmm.
there are always things that out of my control. There are
Yes.
always things that I won't be ready to do if
Hmm.
if it goes across my moral principles or anything
Yeah.
else.
Hmm.
I should be ready that I'll be fired for not performing
Yeah.
the task,
Mhm.
and that is fine.
I think it can be summarized as do proper rational contract negotiation before you start. So understand what is showstopper, what is good employee, who is a good employee, and why certain decisions will be made. It's
And
like
it's
people always ask how I will get my pay rise. Like, what is the process of a pay rise? Why people don't ask what is the process of my firing? I think
Yeah,
it's a good
absolutely.
one.
And the second thing, it's about rationalism too, that you always should negotiate during your work too. Like,
Yes.
if somebody wants to fire you, that's fine, but at
Hmm.
least you should ask why, and
Hmm.
maybe try to change something. Sometimes it's changeable. Sometimes managers make mistakes.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't understand something. You can come and say what you can change. Of
Hmm.
course, if you had already three talks about you will be fired in some period of
Hmm.
time and you didn't change something, that's fine
Hmm.
too,
Yeah.
because it just means that you are not compatible with the organization, and maybe you are not able to adopt to to its
Yeah.
requirements.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't want to, maybe you can't. It's okay to look for new work, for new opportunities during
Yes.
this period.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it sums it well.
Yeah. So it's time to say thank you for our
Yeah.
viewers and future viewers.
Yes.
And it was Pasha and Vitaly.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
guys. Thank you, guys. See you next time.
See you. Bye bye.
Okay. Bye.